Okay. No, this will be good. It's always worked for me. Okay, see if this works for you guys. Yeah, we got 0 viewers. It should be coming on. Hello? Yeah. Got it? Yeah, finally? Okay, sounds good. Okay, great. Screen share. You guys are on?
Screen sharing right now, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit behind. These are email. These are posts. We are still. There's gonna be.
Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay. You guys got that?
You're 30 seconds behind.
Yeah. Or if you want Dipti, I can give you guys the direct Hangout link.
Okay.
No, but that's a YouTube link.
Yeah.
Do you want the Hangout link?
If you can. So
Okay.
Then if somebody's not seeing or hearing, we can chat with
You
them.
can chat with them, yeah. Okay, fine. Let me do that.
So what should we do? I think we should wait for them.
Yeah, just wait for me. I'll just send you the invite. So what is your...
How about diffusion?
This one?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, you guys all set? Yeah, perfect. Okay, guys, sorry about that. Anyway, so we're talking about company culture. I talked about,
Send the link here. Hangout link was not here. Hangout link.
Oh, you should have.
Oh, maybe it's in the Hangout.
Yeah. Yeah, go to your Gmail and you'll see it.
No, it's not in my.
Okay, let's. I'm just going to continue on. We'll fix it by the next by in the break. We'll fix it. Okay. So anyway, so company culture is something that is the responsibility of the founding team, and you know the key. So the key thing was this VP of sales that we hired would look for these two successes, and the quicker he got it, the better, because then for the whole day, he would go around no matter who he met and says, "Hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this?" And essentially, it puts the whole company in a positive frame of mind. And that's a very subtle psychological trick, because if people are in a positive state of mind, they're going to be productive and their output goes up. So this was something that I learned from this VP of sales that we hired, and it really helped the company, uh, you know, for him to go around and do this thing. The other thing that I think is extremely important from a culture is that the founders really cannot argue in public about anything. They have to be totally in sync. And that's why, again, our Saturday meetings was very important, because no matter how much you feel about, you know, your founder, your co-founder, you know, not doing the right thing, you cannot argue with him in public, because the destructiveness that will create in the company will be very hard to repair. And so you don't want to. So this is something that, you know, we all agreed on as a founding team, and this is something that, you know, I have got across in all the three companies that, you know, I did. And the last point is extremely important, because you'll soon find that, you know, the hardest thing is to keep your best talent in the company, because they all know, everybody knows, you know, that these are the guys who are valuable, creating the value, and they're the ones that, you know, you want to grab. Your competition is going to try and grab, or they might even spin out and start a company, because they're going to see that their ideas, or two or three of the three of these guys in your company are really the key guys who can actually carry the company on their shoulders, or they can spin out and do it for themselves, right? And the founding team, you know, essentially is going to make 10x or 100x the return that these key guys are going to do. So anyway, so essentially as founders, you are really depending on a lot of people in your company to make you successful. And what we found is that the best way to keep everybody hanging in there with your company and so on is to tie them up into lots of family type connections, right? So we had lots of family picnics where their wives, the children, everybody came to the company. We had Christmas, holiday things, we had summer picnics, we had so many different special events that we did that kind of brought everybody together. So extremely well for me. So, you know, let's see business to consumer directly, or B to B to C, right? Where you are providing a service to another business that will get the product out to the market. So if somebody is got a relationship with Amazon and Amazon gets to the consumer, it's a B to B to C, right? Then there are, of course, services companies. You can even have a consulting startup, not-for-profit also, very often startups. So there are many different kinds of companies. And the question is, you know, how do you staff up? And what functions do you staff up as you go along? So On the left-hand side, kind of the stages of the company. So you can see that, where only the founders are there. Then you get your first round of seeding, angel seeding or whatever, or your own money. Then you get your Series A, and then you get your Series B, C, and all the way to an IPO. And at the early stage, the internal team should essentially take care of the executive strategy, engineering, the product management, marketing, and typically the founders will divvy up these responsibilities among them. So when we started Opti, I had 3 Taiwanese engineers who were doing different chip designs, and we said, okay, you're doing your chip design, but simultaneously you're going to be responsible for the finances. Hello? Okay, you're going to be responsible for finance. Then we said, okay, you are going to do chip design, but you're also going to be VP of engineering, and you're also going to take care of QA, and you're also going to take care of the manufacturing relationships. So you'll see that in the first round, you still have to fill the functions. The job functions still have to be done, departmental functions, but essentially you take founders and give them the responsibility. They know that it's not the long-term ownership, but somebody has to be responsible for it. So the founders essentially divvy up engineering, product management, marketing, biz dev, finance, sales among themselves. And then once you get to seeded, Series A, you start bringing in, some talent who are very good at marketing, or who are very good at engineering, or who are very good at finance. So you start bringing in these kinds of people, and obviously you'll start moving these functions into them. But on the other hand, most of the execs will again report into the founders. So one of the things that we did was that we kept, we had execs and founders in the executive team meeting, of course, because the VP of sales, VP of marketing or VP of engineering, if they came from outside, you needed your executive staff meeting, but that did not preclude the need for a founders only meeting on Saturday, right? Because even though there are decisions that, one would think that, the executive staff essentially decides to make, the founders are responsible for the entire success of the company, which is the money, or whatever, time frame they have for raising the money or dividing up the equity, how to give stock options, etc. So there are all these sensitive things that essentially in a startup or entrepreneurial company are the domain of the founding team rather than the executive team. So the executive meeting, even though there are executives there, essentially they know that these critical decisions about financing, how much dilution you're going to take, board seats that are going to be assigned to outsiders, which VCs you're going after, what kind of equity is going to be given to new employees coming in, what are going to be the bonuses at the end of the year, or what are going to be the raises. All of those kinds of decisions are founding team decisions, and they are handled outside the executive team. So see that, till you come to probably, I would almost say, all the way till probably IPO, where everything becomes open and transparent, right? Once you're a public company, everything is open and transparent. By the time you get to an IPO, of course, the exec team essentially is responsible, and the CEOs together are responsible for all decisions. But till you're being privately financed through VCs or through other means, essentially the founding team takes a whole bunch of decisions. So it's very important to separate out the decisions that are going to be privy to or influenceable by the exec team and decisions that are going to be taken by the founding team. Okay, so that's important. And then along with that, there's an external team. So all startups will have a whole bunch of external teams that are necessary in order to succeed. So you have the customers, and early stage customers are extremely important and shape the company quite a bit. Investors, advisors, very it's a wonderful opportunity for entrepreneurs to be able to bring in uh, very experienced industry folks as advisors into the company. They can be professors, they can be people who are um, uh, kind of successful entrepreneurs in complementary fields, etc. But these creating an advisory board is something that is a privilege that startups have, and it's something that each startup must leverage, because a lot of people like to be advisors, high level people like to be advisors to startups, and this is your opportunity to get pretty much very cost effective access to knowledge, wisdom, contacts, etc. So advisory boards are very important. Board members, and then partners who will help you finish out your solution. So all that was with regards to team building and company culture, how founders, executives, employees, what is the rate at which you add people. All of these things are fundamental compensation. All of these are fundamental decisions that entrepreneurs and founding teams end up taking that are really going to determine your success, because entrepreneurship, especially the first couple of years, it's very much driven by people and how you manage those people. You have a lot of flexibility, but there still needs to be some logic to your management style, right? Because if people start thinking that you're totally logical in terms of what you do, then you're going to find that uh, it's very hard to run a cohesive, coherent company and build a company for the long run. Any questions on team building and company culture before we move to marketing? Yes?
Hi, this is Anand.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, so there is a startup culture and there is a company culture. Startup is essentially 0 to 1, and company is essentially from 1 to 10. So how does that transition happen when you move from startup culture to company?
Yeah, so good question. So the question is how does a startup culture go from just founders to running like a normal company, right? With processes, systems, and everything else. So the approach that I've taken is that it has to be something that you gradually phase in, because ultimately you're going to end up as a company with uh, processes, good management techniques for MBOs, objectives, all of those things. You've got to have cost reduction, etc. Right? So it's really a decision that you as the founding team or the entrepreneur founder essentially makes consciously. The key is consciously to decide, okay, we should have a planning meeting for the company at the start of every year or once a quarter, like an MBO meeting. Or we should have, these days they run engineering by, what is the process that they use? Huh? Agile method, right? So every Friday you decide to have, this a company meeting run where, you plan, what has been done, and you track what has been done, what's to be done next. But, whether you do it once a week, whether you do it twice a week, or once every 2 weeks, all these are decisions that you are going to bring into your company, right? So I would say that, it's really a judgment call that you're going to make, and every company is going to be different at the speed at which bureaucracy comes into the company. But, I found that typically by the third or fourth year, once you had customers and you had a regular running business and you had lots of VPs and so on, it was very frustrating as an entrepreneur because the company feels slow as molasses when you try to get things done. As an entrepreneur, like you say, hey, we've got to get this thing done. We should be able to do it in 2 weeks. And you throw it into the engineering process and the productization process, suddenly it's 2 months. And that's very frustrating for an entrepreneur to say, oh, all you got to do is change this, and it's done. And that should not take more than 2 weeks. And you'd love to run your company that way. On the other hand, once you become a 3-4-year-old company with lots of customers, what happens is that if you don't follow the process, you're going to start having consequences on lots of different projects and people and their objectives, their goals, and lots of ripple effects start happening when the founder, CEO walks in and says, okay, we're going to do this in 2 weeks. I've committed to the customer. But what about all the other customers that are already paying the bill, and so on, which is something that the VP of sales is taking care of, the VP of marketing is taking care of, the VP of engineering is taking care of the full pie of all the things. So as an entrepreneur, I used to get very frustrated because I felt that, how come we have become so slow in execution? So it's really a decision that you have to make as to what are the key success factors in your company that will determine the speed at which bureaucracy comes into the company. Okay? Yes.
Hi, I'm Nihal.
Yes, Nihal.
We're working on a mental wellness app.
Uh-huh.
But the questions, I had 2 questions. One was dealing with advisors. How many are too many or too few? And how do you handle those meetings? Do you keep them one-on-one or all of them?
Okay, so the question, I'm just repeating for the audience. So the question was advisors, how many, and what is the best way to, so essentially I found that, having about 4, 5, 6, about 6-ish was a good number. And, you slowly build it up. It might take, you can add only 1 every 6 months, 1 every year or whatever, but you get to about 5 or 6, and because you want to have them very complementary to each other and to the company, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is how often a meeting that you have. I think the CEO in particular should have the ability to call any of them anytime, but there's a lot of value that comes from a group meeting also, but they can become expensive and difficult in terms of coordinating the time because these are all high-end people. So I would say doing a advisory board meeting once every 6 months is a good number. And, very often it's just once a year. And, that's a good time to do it because if you're doing fundraising or you're trying to get a decision on some new market direction, new product development, new strategy, that's a good time to run it by them, or how to handle the competition, or how to get your company sold or make a partnership with a big company or something like that. So these are great decisions to discuss with an advisory board, right? As a CEO, you will not be able to understand all the perspectives and all the issues that should be considered when you go about doing it. And Having an advisory board really helps for that particular purpose. And these are things that sometimes you cannot discuss very openly with the board of directors, that you're trying to change the direction of the company. You know, or you want to consider selling out the company, selling the company to a partner, or teaming up with somebody, or doing these decisions. You may not want to discuss openly with the board, because the board has to be managed too. And this is something that we will discuss probably in the last class, which is board management, board creation and management. I think it's totally fundamental to your success, personal success, and the company success. Board, uh, you know, creating the board and then managing the board. But advisory board is something that is complementary to the board of directors, and it's something that will give you ability to bring in some great talent and experienced people into your fold. Good question. Anything else?
I'm Vinay, and I run a small technology and staffing company.
Yes.
So it's a follow-on question on this.
Yeah.
So how do you compensate the advisors, and what are they looking for to be
Right.
part of your?
So the question was, how do you compensate advisory board members, right? So essentially what I found is that for advisory board members, I would typically give between less than 0.1% of the stock. So it's stock options, 4-year stock options. So more like, between the 6 advisory board members, I might divvy up, about 0.1 or 0.2% of the whole company stock. So typically you don't give cash. Now I've had situations where some advisory board members insisted that I pay for the airfare or whatever, and for the hotel and so on. But most of them will typically be able to take care of it themselves. But you typically don't pay for these meetings. For board members, we will discuss in the last class, because there it's again slightly more complex. Okay. Okay. Yes, Shekhar.
May I add 2 cents on
Sure.
company culture part of it? Sorry, I'm losing my voice, so I might be clearing my throat.
Hang on. Let me give you a mic, Shekhar. Hello, hello. Hello. Oh, hello, hello. Okay. Come ahead.
Thanks, Raj.
Yeah, be careful in front of the mic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Front of the speaker, yeah.
in terms of company culture, I think with my own experience, it's very important to have a mission. And I think all the companies have mission statements, because when you see the business plans and all that, but you ask the founder, what is the mission of your company? And they have to go back into the iPad or the iPhones and check the mission statement. If that's your mission, then that's not your mission. Mission is actually, if I can use the expression raison d'être, which is your reason for existence. And you need to really have it. And every employee, the core team member, must feel it in their bones. If you don't feel it in your bones, you shouldn't be doing a startup. And then you need to have a missionary zeal along with the mission. Because if you have the mission and the missionary zeal, when the chips are down or when you're celebrating the victories or at the goal post or whatever, that's what will bind you together and take you to the next level. So it's important to have the mission as a part of, because that's the glue which binds the entire team together. Talking of the startup, one of the questions was the gentleman that when you grow to a size, what do you do? So there are 2 startups I want to talk about. One of them was the largest startups we have ever seen, called General Electric, under Jack Welch. When Jack Welch retired, Ramcharan interviewed him, the famous professor who's written a lot of books. And he said, how did you really take GE to what you took it to? GE, one of the most complex organizations, 250 global businesses, multi-location, multi-complexities, and yet they did 18% year on year. There's not a 10 beggar, but to do it over 80 years period is really unthinkable. And it did, and he said, I ran that as a startup. So what they did was they created those groups and they created that missionary zeal, which bound them together so they can really beat the law of gravity. And that's the only way you can really challenge gravity. So that's what you do. Another one experiment which is happening right here in Silicon Valley, which we should all very closely monitor, and that's Google and Alphabet. The way Alphabet is being done, because Google's become a corporation. So my son, he was in Google. Your daughter is there and she loves it. And he quit because he found it's a corporation. And he thought it wasn't a startup, but he quit a little too early. But if you look at Alphabet, the whole experiment is that they want to keep that startup zeal or that missionary zeal in Alphabet so that they can really build it like a startup. So you can do that. So while I totally agree with what you said, that you have to really transition to whatever you want to do, coming back to the advisor part of it, you address it very well. To me, the most important thing is you have to have personal chemistry with the startups. I invested in one of the companies in nano space, and there were 3 Nobel Prize winners. That company name is known, and it flamed up. Flamed out very quickly because there were 3 Nobel laureates involved in it. And the CEO was spending 20% of his time every day just managing the egos of those advisors. So don't hire the advisors because they have a great CV or whatever if you don't have the personal chemistry. They should work for you, and you shouldn't be working for them. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so actually, the reason Google split out or created Alphabet was because they still had to run Google, which is now this big monolithic, massive company, as a corporation with a lot of bureaucracy, right? So that's a part of, so that has to be done. But Alphabet now gives Larry and Sergey the framework to run different parts of it as startups, right? So as they come up with new ideas, like the car that runs by itself, driverless car and all that, they'll run that as a startup. And if any of these new ideas becomes massive, unfortunately, it'll end up with some bureaucracy and starts doing. Okay, so now we move to something that is extremely key to your success, and that is marketing. So I'll just give a quick anecdote, which is, when Opti started off in 1988, basically this valley goes through these phases in every industry where suddenly from the market leader, there are 10, 20 spinouts that happen, right? Something happens in the environment and suddenly like there is this whole flood of startups that comes out of this company that has become, that really created the market or whatever. So somehow or the other, about 5 years after Chips and Technologies came up and created the chipset market, suddenly there were like 10 or 20 startups. Well, companies to raise 5 million, 10 million, whatever. And what's interesting is that 3 years later, Opti was the one at the top of the heap that ended up becoming public, while the remaining 19 companies all, failed and, shut down. So the question is like, what was the difference between Opti and the 19 other companies? And the difference, in my opinion, was the fact that the 3 technical founders essentially worked really hard to get somebody with marketing and sales as a co-founder into the company. Marketing and sales guys are the hardest to find at the founding stage. You can bring them in as employees, but to bring them in as co-founder, a lot of companies don't do that, because a lot of founding teams don't do that because they feel that, look, for the next year and a half or 2, we're all going to be focused on developing the technology. So what is going to do the sales guy? And while the 3 technical co-founders of Opti decided that, we really need somebody to join our team as a co-founder to take responsibility for the sales marketing front. And they brought me in. And the key is that, they could have brought me in 2 years later when the product was ready also. But then I would not have joined them because, why would I want to join as an employee of a company where, I bring in all the revenue, all the success of the company, and I'm going to be compensated, 1/100th of, the 3 co-founders. So essentially, if you want to get the best talent in marketing or sales to join you, the time to grab them is when you're founding your company. That's when, the top person from Cisco, a really high-level guy from Cisco or from, Google, some of these hard-to-get talent, they will not join you as an employee 2 years later. To join you as a co-founder. So that is something that a lot of people don't realize, that in order to get the best talent in marketing or sales, you have to get them at the founding stage. And I believe that, similar thing happened to me at Selectica. So for about 5 years, Sanjay Mittal, from 1992 onwards, he had the technology, everything in configuration, etc. He went to 40 different VCs over 5 years, showed them all his technology and everything, and couldn't raise a penny of funding. So, and finally, like he ended up meeting me at a PyCon by chance, at a PyCon dinner in 1996, and said, Raj, can you help me? I've got some great technology, etc. And after a few discussions, I decided to jump in. And, once I jumped in, everything just started rolling, because essentially, once you get, a top-notch solution, or the team that's going to do the technology, teamed up with the marketing and sales guy, your team is complete. And team, it's going to be very hard to succeed. See, the big thing that happens, you are marketing and sales guys. Okay, so quite a few here, relatively, but in general, most founding teams find a single good marketing guy, and they don't realize, what the value of that marketing guy is. So the key value that a top-notch marketing or sales guy does for your company is that he brings a network of relationships in the industry with him. So for example, when our Opti chipset got done, the first thing necessary for the chipset was to get a BIOS for the motherboard BIOS, right? That needs to be done. And to get that motherboard BIOS, there were only 2 or 3 vendors, Phoenix Technologies, AMI, that were doing this BIOS, and they had to be convinced to do a BIOS for you. Now, if there are BIOS requirements from VLSI and chips and Intel and TI, everybody's developing chipsets. Obviously, a new startup's chipset is not going to get a BIOS. Without a BIOS, you cannot launch your product. So, once they hired me, I had a personal relationship with the CEO of AMI, who happened to be also an Indian, Shankar, right? And the VP was Bakul Shah. And so as soon as I joined joined Opti, or joined this team, within 2 months, I called up Bakul and Shankar. I said, we are coming up with a new chipset, and I think it's great, but I need your help. And I use my personal relationship, not a business relationship, for them to go ahead and assign the better engineers to do a BIOS. If they put the lousy engineers to do my BIOS, it would be buggy, and people will think my chipset is buggy. It would be slow, and people think my chipset is slow. It'll be late, and it's going to give me more problems. So, I got them to put the best engineers, do it, give me a very high quality product, and also to allow me to get a reference from him when we launch the product. Because when the CEO of AMI, who also works with all the other big chipset vendors, all the big companies, says that, hey, we have done a BIOS for Opti. You've never heard of Opti, but the reason we have done it is because we think it's a great product. Think of the reference you got, right? So all of a sudden, it's the personal connection that the marketing guy brings into the that is fundamental. So that's on the marketing front, and the next thing that happens is that startups find it very hard to get PR and publicity. It's very hard to get bloggers to write about you, like Vivek Wadhwa to write about your product, right? He's got 4 million people following you, but if he doesn't, if VentureBeat doesn't write about your product, nobody knows about your company. Nobody knows about the breakthroughs that you've done. If all the different newspapers or the industry rags don't write and talk about you, if the industry analyst firms, Gartner Group or whoever it is in your industry, does not cover you and put you on that chart, 2x2 chart, and position you, you are a nobody, right? So the question is, how do you get there? You can't get there by hiring, top-notch PR companies and so on. Even if you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, a PR company cannot get you onto the Gartner Magic Square. They cannot get you into the trade rags. They cannot get you blogged by the industry bloggers. That happens only because of personal relationship. That's the crazy thing about how marketing works. Marketing works because of personal relationship that has been built by 5, 10, 15 years. Hey, I scratch your back. I give you things. I give you news stories before anybody else. Before I give it to anybody else. When I was working for Intel and Chips, so I give you additional information about what's going on. So now he owes you. You're calling in those chits. You're calling in those things that are owed to you. And essentially, good marketing guys have the relationship in the industry ecosystem that allows them to get your company's products or solution or message out there in the press or in the right blogs or whatever is appropriate to your particular and it cannot be bought. That's a crazy thing, that you cannot get it bought by spending money on professional marketing companies or PR companies or whatever. So that's number one. And you'll soon find that sales is the same thing, but relationships with the target customers, right? Those relationships were built over 10, 20 years, selling products from 5 other different companies, and now that director of sales or VP of sales is taking your product, calling in those chits, giving you an opportunity to get considered, evaluated, whatever. Finally, a product has to stand on its own legs. But getting a chance to even pitch your story requires an opportunity to get there, get in front of the right people at the right time. And a marketing person does it. So go-to-market strategy is, in my opinion, the make or break for most companies. Now, there will be a rare company here and there where, the product is so fantastic that, everybody talks about it anyway, but 99.9% of the startups are going to need a marketing person and a sales person and a business development person. So these three functions go together in the early stages: marketing, BD, and sales, or strategic sales. So these three functions typically are put together under one person, and that person better be the best you can get your hands on. And the way to get that is to reach out from day one. As you start thinking of your company and your idea and your passion, or the thing that you're passionate about, that's one of the nuts you got to crack. You got to try and find that marketing guy or sales guy or BD guy who is going to do it for you. And actually, my son Sujay did that for Dropbox. If Sujay had not been there, then essentially Dropbox would be a fraction of what it is right now, because of, and we'll cover some of the key things that Sujay did for Dropbox that the founding team and the product could have never done. And we'll talk about that. So go-to-market strategies is fundamental to your success of your company. And it's really important to get that guy or girl at the startup stage, right? At the co-founding stage. Okay, so we're going to break it up into multiple segments. One is B2C, since a lot of web-based businesses are there these days. Then we're going to do some B2B, and then we're going to talk about global marketing, because all three are important and different, completely different challenges for most startups. So the challenge for a B2C is really how to get users, right? And this presentation was actually prepared by this guy called John, who started a whole bunch of web businesses, and he gave most of these slides as a presentation to the Stanford University entrepreneurship students, right? And Stanford has been really generous in terms of sharing that. Stanford Technology Venture Program has been very generous in sharing a lot of the content with me, because since I represent IIT Bombay and I teach at IIT Bombay, and IIT Bombay has a partnership with Stanford in the entrepreneurship area, we collaborate, and so they've shared it and let me use it. So the problem for a B2C customer is, how do you get started, right? It's a cold start problem, which is, we all know that if you had 1 million customers, you got a viable business model. So for example, for Dino, all I needed to do was get to 100,000 paying consumers for my video channels. And if I got there, from there to 1 million, 10 million was just a numbers game. But between 0 to 100,000 was trying to do every game, every trick in the book in order to get there. It doesn't, and and we got to 14,000, and then we collapsed. But anyway, so the whole challenge for everybody in the B2C business is how to get to scale. Once you get to scale, does anybody have a problem if we made you the CEO of Facebook? Would you have a problem running Facebook or Google or Twitter or Dropbox? It becomes quite easy to run a B2C company once you get to scale, right? I mean, it's the greatest thing. But to get to that point where where you've gone over the hump, that's the hard thing. And what ended up happening in my books is that the VCs have made it very difficult, because what they've done is they've raised the bar. So for products that have got little technology but just a great idea, for all of them, money is the differentiator. And for Dropbox, they've plunked down more than $1 billion. For Facebook, it was $1 billion, $2 billion before they even asked Mark Zuckerberg to bring in the first dollar of ad revenue. Google, they gave them good 5 years of search without advertising before they had to worry about bringing in money. Same thing with Twitter. So they made money the differentiator for companies with little technology but a great idea, right? Sometimes, of course, with Airbnb and others, you can have a great idea, and getting the money is still difficult. But in general, the biggest issue is how do you get to that point where you break even and making money. So basically, the key thing for all of these kinds of companies is doing what we talked about in the BMC, which is going ahead and nailing your message, getting the message right, so that the few seconds that you have in front of your target consumer result in a good conversion rate. You cannot say, okay, it's not like a direct sales situation where you got your 30 minutes or 1 hour with the CIO to convince him. You got seconds, and you got to essentially get your conversion in those seconds, right? And the way to do it is to focus on, the minimum necessary to get into the mind of the consumer and get him to do conversion. So focus on nailing the message before you spend a lot of dollars, because it's very easy to spend money incredibly fast in doing this, in trying to get consumers. For example, at Dino, we're trying to get people to use our video streaming service, and he said, hey, a lot of people who would like to do streaming are there on Facebook. So we went on Facebook, we signed up to do ads, and we said, okay, we'll spend $500, and hopefully we'll get 30 to 40, 50 users who will want to do streaming every time we spend $500. And so we started putting in, say, $500 a day, because we had a certain goal to get to 100,000 users, right? And we said, okay, if we put in this kind of money, we'll get there. And we put in the $500 on Facebook. That $500 got consumed in 22 minutes. And we didn't get a single user of our video streaming service. And they ate up our $500 first day, second day, third day, fourth day, and they said, stop! Because essentially, if the message was wrong and the channel is wrong and you're not getting in front of the right consumer, there's a lot of people who will spend your money for no reason, who hit those clicks and click through for no reason out there. The world is full of such people. There's more of those people than the real consumer, right? People are really going to click on your thing for really giving you, taking advantage of your service. So the thing is that nailing your message, figuring out the channel is really extremely important. Otherwise, you'll just run through money like water, and on any of, like, whether it's on Google search or on Twitter or LinkedIn or any of these guys, all these platforms. The reason why they're taking off is because there are so many companies that they're taking to the cleaners every day. Yeah, I'm joking in a sense because a lot of people are getting value, right? But there are a lot of other along with the companies that are getting value, there's a lot of people that are getting cleaned out also. They're not getting the value for their things, right? Like Groupon was a classic example of somebody who got wiped out, right? Yeah.
Is this presentation on the Netcast course, right?
Yes, it's there. It's the 5th section, the go-to marketing for entrepreneurs. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the important thing here is that there are a lot of software tools that are available to help you get your message right. So here's an example called Optimizely that does A/B testing, right? So you can do this or that, and you can go ahead and set up the two options, run it in front of real consumers very quickly, really figure out what's going on with your thing. So the key is, as almost any marketing guy at any of these B2C companies will tell you, is measure, 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 right? And there's a whole bunch of software companies and startups, most of them, that have developed all kinds of tools that will help you do it. And a lot of these guys have got free-to-use tools in the at least the early stages, and you can try them out. Google Analytics is something that we use quite extensively in order to understand, what was going on with our website and our customer. So you get all of that stuff, and now you figure out how are you going to get the customers, right? Now this is another multi-billion-dollar business, helping you find your few hundred or thousand or 10,000 customers. That's a multi-billion-dollar business. And look at the number of different companies that are there just to help you. They can help you in the area of agencies, of course. They can help you to optimize your ad servers, check the verification, retarget your ads, optimize the creativity of your brochures and your messages and your website and everything. They can do your media planning for you. They can do measurements and analytics for you. They can provide you all the data, mailing lists by the dozens. I mean, it's amazing how many mailing lists of everybody there is. And yet we used to buy these mailing lists with 100,000 people and you get no value out of it, right? And you're wondering, you spent, your marketing VP will come and say, oh, let's buy this mailing list, let's buy this thing and that thing. And, if you don't measure your VP of marketing, you have to measure your VP of marketing too. That, when he's spending your dollars, whether it's on Facebook ads or email ads or email campaign or whatever, you're getting results, right? And this is probably an area that the founding team, which is typically technical, ends up not paying attention to. And before you know it, you're wasting your hard-earned or hard-raised money, because it's as you can see, you bring in a professional VP of marketing who's not a co-founder. He doesn't have enough skin in the game, and he's going to be doing all of this stuff. Before you know it, whatever money you raised is gone. It's as simple as that. Marketing is something where it's really easy to spend money and give you nice slides with zero results, right? And yet, if you find a great marketing person, he will know that, I know that I can get this particular email list from this particular vendor. I can go ahead and place ads in this particular area. He will know the answers. Marketing is one function where you don't need to study the whole science of it. You just need the answers. All you need at IIT, we call it the cog sheet, where you just need to know the answers to the questions that the professor is going to put in the exam. That's all you need. You need a marketing guy who has the cog sheet with him. Who knows those 5 guys who are going to write about your industry, who's the analyst at Gartner Group who just got promoted, who's going to write that report on this particular week, and is struggling to fill up that magic square, and you're going to and he's helped him, and he knows how to help him fill it in with the right names, etc., give him the right information. So really, the marketing guy is the guy who has all the answers, because he's a pro. He's done it before. He's got the relationships. He knows what works, what doesn't work. All of this experience he's got by being the VP or Director of Marketing at a big company and wasting all their money, right? So that was expensive education that he has got. Now he puts it to use for you, where essentially you get advantage of all his experience and connections and knowledge without having to spend on this. This used to be my most frustrating challenge, because at some point, you have to hire a VP of marketing, even though I was a marketing sales guy. At Opti, we had to hire a VP of marketing. The company had become so big, right? And you bring in this VP of marketing from outside, and I know that I don't need to go through all of this stuff in order to get the job done, to launch my new chipset or launch my new competitive thing or story or whatever. All I got to do is I call this person, I talk to this thing, the job is done. You hire a VP of marketing who's a generalist, got Harvard MBA or Stanford MBA, has worked at all these big companies, and you bring him in as a VP of marketing because the board is saying, we need to get a name brand VP of marketing, we need to get a name brand this, and you put him there. Before you know it, he's going through all this stuff and getting zero results, right? The results just don't come in. So it's extremely important as an entrepreneur, technical, I'm assuming that you guys are on the technical side, most of you, is that you have to find a marketing guy that knows his shit, knows what he's doing, and really is a pro, has got his contacts, knows and can choose, how he can pretty much write his own collateral, write his own blog, do his own, a 30-second, 1-minute video clip, so I've ended up training a lot of people that work in the companies that I've run to become those types of marketing people, right? So, for example, one person that I trained at Dino, uh, she ended up getting a job at Microsoft as a marketing evangelist. And she came to me and said, I've got good news and bad news. I said, so what is it? So she said that I've got a job at Microsoft, and it's like twice the salary that you're paying me at Dino. so if you insist, I won't leave Dino, but obviously I'm not going to come in the way of twice the salary and so on. So I said, go for it, and good luck. And what's interesting is that she was telling me that, they had to do a 90-second video clip to, send a message to developers for Microsoft Windows 8 or whatever. And so essentially the rest of the marketing guys at Microsoft said, we're going to hire a creative group, and then we're going to hire somebody to write the script, and then we're going to have somebody go ahead and find somebody to take the video and get a studio, and it's going to be a 90-day project, and it's going to cost like $250,000, a 90-second clip. And this person that I trained at Dino essentially wrote it herself, wrote something in the night, put a video camera in front of her, and just, gave the message, 90-second message. And the next day she went to her manager and said, I've done something, for promoting our Windows 8 to developers as a 90-second video clip. I just did it last night, and can I show it to you? So she said, sure. And she showed a 90-second, and the manager was blown away because he said, this is all we need. Why do we have to wait 90 days, $250,000, get this thing, and, overnight it's done. She got the 90-second clip. Obviously, she's a marketing person. She wrote a message, got it done, and essentially, and those are the kind of people that you want. People who can, because ultimately in marketing, the important thing is, time is of the essence, right? And time and our return on investment for marketing dollars is the essence. And very often, you spend that 90 days, by the time you get it, actually, the product has changed direction, the company has changed its mind, the manager has changed, the budget might have disappeared, gone to some other project. Time makes a big difference in terms of, whether the marketing strategy you're going to execute is going to be useful or not, right? So essentially, all this is good to know, and the VP of marketing or director of marketing needs to know all of this stuff, but he needs to be somebody who can, has got the answer sheet. So for doing a video, all we got to do is get it done in 3 days, and I'm just going to go, I know I've worked with this person is going to, you write the 3 messages, we'll get together and you write it overnight, and tomorrow morning we will review it, and boom, just get it done, right? So you as co-founders have to go ahead and understand how to manage your own marketing team and its budget, and get the mindset of, get the job done now kind of stuff, right? So, essentially, like, all these, we saw these hundreds of tools out there and hundreds of companies out there. It's a multi-billion-dollar business to just help you, do your search engine optimization correctly. And essentially, the logic is very simple. What is the lifetime value of the user, and how much you're going to spend to get it? And there are so many ways of doing it. You can do search, you can do display advertising, incentivize, retargeting, etc. So it's all there, and the fundamental is to figure out, what is somebody worth and how much are you going to really spend to get there. And you need a marketing guy that will go ahead and get you there for even less than what you think you can. Go ahead.
You're talking about B2C plays right now.
Yes.
With a bunch of startup entrepreneurs. Realistically, how much should you be thinking about in terms of spending as a B2C startup play to sort of prove the value proposition? Is it 5,000, 20,000? You said obviously the sky's the limit, but realistically, if you don't have $40,000 to spend on a pre-seed startup budget for this, should you even get in the game?
Yeah, see, to me, like B2C is the most tempting startup for most entrepreneurs because it's so easy to get in, and everybody sleeps and wakes up with a great idea. And most of the projects at IITs and other places, that student projects are all B2C projects. So the biggest challenge for all these B2C companies or startups is validating it and getting the message and getting the conversion to be a cost-effective conversion and so on, right? So I would not put a firm dollar number. I would really be looking at going ahead and looking for what I call veins of gold, right? That you find in a mine, right? So, there's two ways of mining. One is to really break the whole mountain and then crush all the rock and then get, 5 nuggets for every, 5 grams for every ton of rock that you process, right? And that's the big company approach. And, that's how, but a startup doesn't have that luxury in my books. Because I don't think most entrepreneurs are going to get VCs to plunk down $1 billion, like, which is, crush a ton of rock to get 5 grams of gold approach, right? So for most entrepreneurs, the issue is, can you locate, a rich vein of consumers or users for your product or service in a targeted fashion? If you can do that, whether it is college, whether it is yuppies with a certain interest, or whether it is females in a certain demographic, or a city, or urban, or whatever, if you can, identify niches of consumers that you can get to because of your special access through some channel or the other, so that you can cost effectively do your validation, to me that is what it's all about. I think there'll always be an opportunity for the massive startups, world-changing startups like Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and so on, the unicorns of the world, as we were discussing with Shekhar. But for the majority, it is like, can we get some targeted consumer demographic that we can reach out to with whatever marketing techniques are relevant or appropriate in order to get the job done, right? Okay, so when you're doing paid acquisition, there are all these important points to remember, and I'm going to share with you on the portal essentially for people who are into the e-commerce B2C segment, because a lot of the platforms that have come along are wonderful for long tail businesses, right? And long tail businesses, can somebody explain what a long tail business is? Anybody knows what a long tail business is? Yeah,
It's basically,
give him the mic.
if you draw a chart where on the y-axis you have the customer with the dollar value that they can give you, and the horizontal x-axis you have the number of customers.
Turn it on. The red button.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Start again. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. So if you draw an x and y axis graph where you have y axis where you have the dollar value for the customer per customer that'll bring those customers will bring you, and the x axis is the number of customers in that segment. So normally the graph goes like this, where there are many very small number of customers who will give you a much higher dollar value, and very large number of customers who give very small dollar value. If you look at that graph, it actually looks like an animal with a long tail over there. And the tail is so long that if you catch the tail, so there are so many customers with small dollar value that actually you'll get a lot more revenue out of that. So that's why a lot of people are going into capturing the long tail of the market. Is that correct?
Slightly, you're kind of in the right direction, but go ahead and explain.
I'll simplify in terms of dollar values and all that so we understand. So what happens is that when you go into the business, classically people will tell you focus on A category business or B category customers, because that's where your 80% really comes. So 20% of the customers maybe are two customers and 80% comes from that. So 20%, which really matters, people just let it go. So the big guys are not focusing on it. And that's where, the margins are low, but the volumes are so compelling that if you can consolidate that, you could become bigger than any of the bigger players. That the concept is. And the examples are really plenty of them. And then, one of the businesses, which is not startup, but I can share, which is a community where Raj Jaswa comes from in India. And you know about the diamond business, for example. Diamond business was controlled by the Nicky Oppenheimer, and the cousins. To use the expression Jewish community is not right, but that was the right context. So they owned 100% of the business. And and that is like today is about $20 billion legal business. I'm not talking about the blood diamonds. And the way the Palanpuri Gujaratis came in was that, the most of the rough diamonds, which were really not of value, they'll be thrown out because nobody will even polish them or cut them and whatever. So they slowly moved into that. And they became so humongous on that they were invited by the Central Sales Organization in London, Nicky Oppenheimers and the others, and saying that, come and be our site holders. Site holders means are the people who on every third Tuesday, that's not important, but it's important because it's a club where you get invited and you look at what the roughs from the world really comes. Sometimes those roughs are big. Yesterday's big news is 1,110 carat rough they found. That'll be worth $300 million, by the way, as a rough. So what they did was they started focusing on that, and they became so big that today the business is 50-50. So they took the long tail in a real life, and they built on top of it. Similarly, I'm talking of Indian business. I'm not talking about Airbnb in particular. If you go to India today, you have the Hyatt hotels, you have the 5-star hotels, but a lot of people who want to pay not more than $1,000 for a hotel room. Only problem is in the hotel room you want to go to, you don't know when you will end up in that place. Whether there'll be bed bugs, whether the sheets will be clean, whether the towel might have been already used by somebody and you're using it. So somebody has to brand it. So now a lot of businesses have come up, and I would really urge you to look at one guy. He's a 21-year-old guy. SoftBank just gave him $100 million at a valuation of OYO. I'm not an investor in the company or whatever, but I'm giving you an example of it. And he is a 21-year-old, but looks like he still hasn't even reached his puberty. He looks like 14-year-old. And they've given him $100 million. What he did was, he said, I'll do the franchising of 900 to 2,000 rupees hotels. And I'll put a brand. I'll make sure that when you end up at that hotel room, you get what you're expecting from an OYO. That's a long tail. Nobody was looking at it. And by the way, his valuation is bigger and would be bigger than maybe the Oberois of the world in next 2 years. So that's the long tail and the value of it. So one
Yeah.
can take the long tail and create a huge value out of that also.
Yeah, just get it. Yeah, so basically the long tail is where a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities are there, and they're there because they are hard to get to markets. The big companies have let them go, and with the new platforms that have emerged, like Google Search and e-commerce platforms like Amazon, it's possible to get to these long tail customers with very specialized needs who might be scattered all over the world in a very cost effective way. So the new platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, and Google Search, etc., have now actually allowed the long tail market to be harvested in a cost effective manner, right? So, for example, like, the umbrella market in India is about 40 to 50 million umbrellas, all black, right? All of them are black. So this young kid who basically, is only 22 years old, decided that, why should all umbrellas be black? There must be somebody who would like to have a funny or a fancy umbrella, colorful, or or something that is interesting umbrella. So there's got to be some people out of the 50 million umbrellas that are sold, and he started a company called Cheeky Chunk Umbrellas, and he did the whole designs himself for 7 or 8 umbrellas, like, I Love Mumbai, Rains, Vada Pav, I Love Vada Pav. Then he put some Hindi music songs on a few umbrellas. He made one which was a museum umbrella with all kinds of different things on it. So basically, he created 8 different designs, and then he got the manufacturer to make it, and then he started marketing it. And he tried many different marketing techniques, and then the first year he could sell 1,000 umbrellas, and then the next year, since he now had his marketing and everything done, this year he sold 10,000 umbrellas at about 500 rupees each, and made a profit of about 20 lakh rupees. And the next year's goal is 100,000, 1 lakh umbrellas. So he is well on his way to becoming a long tail, very successful e-commerce e-tailer, right? And because he found people from, even though he's selling all these umbrellas, he found that people in small towns all over India, from Imphal in Manipur, from Chandigarh, others who are buying, I Love Mumbai Rains kind of umbrella. But, for whatever reason, they're buying it. And the thing is that, he's created a nice long tail business, and he's become the #1 out of the top 15 umbrellas on Amazon.in page. You can do a search. You'll find that at least 2 or 3 of the top umbrellas are Cheeky Chunk umbrellas, right? So he's actually he was one of my students, and TAs actually, and he actually has become a great speaker, and actually now he tells the story of how he built up his long tail e-commerce business on Amazon and Flipkart. He's at Taikon Nagpur. He was the most popular speaker, and he also puts quite a few blogs. So you guys should write his name down. His name is Pratik Doshi, Pratik Doshi, and just go to his Facebook page, and you'll find lots of amazingly relevant articles for e-commerce marketing that that you this kind of information you can never get. Real hands-on information about what are the top 10 things to do when you put your long tail product, whether it's an umbrella or whether it's yoga mat or whether it's clothing that you've designed or whatever, or food or whatever you've designed, which is your long tail product targeted at very specific people, how to promote it and sell it on these big e-commerce platforms, right? So he's put down his top 10 rules for that and things like that. So, yeah.
One of the thoughts that I can share with you, which is not mine, but Uber, and if you look at what they're doing, is the sharing economy, basically. So it's a peer-to-peer, but it's a B2C, but peer-to-peer economy. And the concept is it's at the very fundamentals of the economics, is that if the assets are not being utilized, they should be utilized. They should be given away to somebody as a service who can use it. So Uber, if you really look at it, what is Uber? It is, I've got time, I've got car. I've got the asset, I've got the time, and they convert that into a service. That's Uber. Airbnb, I've got the apartment which is idle, and I can give it to somebody. Now somebody has created a huge business of parking spot which you're not using when you're away for 3 months. Why that should not be used by somebody? It's an asset which you've got, whether you lease it or you bought it, and you can do that. Trillions of dollars worth of value would be created in that sharing economy platform. Then if you can really come up with one of those ideas of a B2C, you can monetize those assets that you've got. And then each one of you know about it. I would, there is a peer-to-peer, on how Zipcar was created. I'm not a spokesperson for them. I'm not invested in that company. Or sharing economy, that's the title of a book. Somebody's written it. I forgot the name of the author. I would really suggest do read it. First of all, the read is so amazing. It'll take you at least a couple of hours. You won't leave the book. You got to read it. You could create some humongous businesses, according to me, because there are lots of assets out here which are available, which you can monetize and create a lot of. And by the way, that really goes back into the long tail, because some of that, this is long tail of another form where you can really consolidate and become big before anybody's even got a window.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So long tail is something that can really leverage the new platforms of search and so on. When you do display advertising, these are the key things, and it's important to again keep the ads dynamic because of the speed at which people get bored with display ads. Again, for SEO, this is what's important. Your inbound links and the content is very important. And these days, it boils there's a ton of startups in the app store business, right? And even in the app stores, it's a question of whether you get the ratings properly and whether you're at the top of the list, right? You're the first one put out there. So again, this is how the rankings are based on the title, the keywords, recent installs, and ratings. And optimizing that is fundamentally a success. And ultimately, for a lot of these companies, it's word of mouth, right? Stimulated by virality. So virality is the key, and for a lot of companies, and this is how virality is done. And depending on whether you get more word of mouth happening than the effort that's being put in, that's going to generate your growth and so on. Another thing that's really important in B2C marketing is retention, which is, keeping your brand awareness up there, because consumers are getting battered by so many different different things grabbing their attention all the time, right? So retention and so that customers don't forget you is extremely important. This is a really important thing for every startup to remember, which is You've got to do your press activity when you can go ahead and get the maximum bang for the buck, whether it's in getting new consumers, getting more business, getting more orders, whatever your criteria is. Essentially, there are so many companies, startups, that end up pre-launching the product. For example, I was on the board of a company called AppStream, and this was a company that ended up raising $65 million. And just 2 years after they launched their product, they launched it at a show in Las Vegas with a lot of press and momentum, etc., PR, and etc. They got Best of Show award, and the product did not work. And it took them another 5 years to get the product working. Guess what? 5 years later, when you're ready to launch the product, nobody's ready to write a story about it, because it got Best of Show award 5 years ago. And so the thing is that for most companies, it's not that bad, but generally the spike that you get in interest is probably for a few days or for a few weeks, but after that it dies away. And it's definitely not going to last for more than a few weeks. The other thing that's important for B2C is the speed at which you come up with newer versions, newer features, and this is something that Google has mastered, right? And Facebook is doing a continuous update almost every day. And contrast that with Microsoft, right? The reason why Microsoft, in spite of owning the whole market, end up losing it and is on the way to losing everything is because they take a year or 2 years or even 5 years for the next version of the operating system. While how often does Chrome change on you? How often does Android change on you? All the time. Android, there's a new version, there's a major release that comes every 6 months or so on, and even that is less than 6 months. But there are versions of each new version almost every other day, right? So, and kind of Google has mastered the technique of going ahead and having a very quick iteration rate. And this is where one way to do it is to actually have your engineers also have a marketing bent and a testing bent. So they can write code, test it, and do market, they are sensitive to market needs, and they can get the product checked out by their friends, etc., all packaged in one person. So the founding team, especially for software guys, should not be a classical engineer type in this B2C market. So the whole idea is that the B2C engineer themselves need to be of this type, where they can make changes to product based on feedback that they get, all in a matter of minutes or hours, and get it also tested and checked out and so on. Everything is done by one person. He does not have to check. Marketing guy doesn't get the input, write the spec, somebody else does the product development, somebody else does the testing, somebody documentation all along, and all of that stuff. All of that is done in one person's head. But the personality needs to be this complex personality, right? Ability to change his focus from being an engineer to a tester to a QA guy. And I found that it's very interesting that when I was at Intel as a product manager, we used to follow the classical product management, product development methodology. And that's where, we were getting our product developed by this team in Israel. And suddenly the war between Israel and Lebanon happened. This is 1982 or something. 1983 or 84. And suddenly, my whole team was out on the was out in the front, and the leader of my team was the tank commander, and the engineers were the gunner and navigator and all that. My whole team was and what's interesting is that these guys, are so amazing. During the day, they would be out fighting, and during the night, they'd be writing code. And they were so committed to getting the product out on time that, they did it. And what's interesting is that after they shipped us the code, we said, okay, now we'll take it over, a QA guy and documentation and all of that stuff. And these guys from Israel insisted on, reading the manual, tracking the milestones and the release cycle and everything, and the customer feedback and everything. They wanted to know everything that's going on with the success of the product, or with the productization and the ultimate success of the product. What are the bugs that are coming in? They were not responsible for it, but it is in their genetic code, and that's why I believe that Israel is kind of one of the entrepreneurship centers of the world, because it's in their DNA to not just be satisfied with doing code because that's my job. They want to know everything about the lifespan of the product and success, commercial success of the product. Yes.
So these kind of people who are like not Jack, but like kind of pseudo master of all trades, thrive very well in startup environments. But we are talking about Google and Facebook, which are large organizations. So I mean, those persons thrive over there. I find it difficult
how is Google managing?
And how Google manages that.
Yeah. So Google, I've had a few friends, and I think maybe you guys who have had kids working there can add it. But I've had some friends working there, and some very interesting things about Google, where 20% of every engineer's time, the engineer is free to do whatever his pet project is. And those pet projects all are first tested within Google, within the department, within their friends, then the departments, then the whole company. So Google Mail was checked and run by 20,000, 50,000 employees within Google for months, maybe quarters or years, for a year, before it got out into the open world. So all these list of 1,000 Google products that are out there, all these itsy-bitsy products that are there on Google's website that you can try out and participate in and use and so on, are all products developed by engineers in their own pastime, in their free time, 20% every year, every week. And then the Google employees are partnering to test it out. Then the whole company is partnering to test it out. And then the company never launches these products, but puts it out in the open. And then only when it's got enough momentum and success, then it's officially launched or whatever. But the point is that, this was kind of, to me, when I first saw it working, it just blew my mind. Because, I said, Google is going to be the biggest threat to entrepreneurs in the Valley. Because, they've created an environment where the smartest engineers who get paid so much, and they have the time, they have the resources, but more important is they've got an environment that's willing to try out the products, test it out. The whole company is supporting it, supporting the environment. Once some functionality becomes, positive or good for the company to have, to use, and then launches it. I mean, why would a product fail? And it's fascinating that companies like the competitors like Oracle and Microsoft and SAP have not thought of this thing. And you know, personally, I think it's amazing that, you know, even though everything I'm saying is pretty much out in the public, and people can see what Google has achieved as a consequence, even Apple doesn't follow it. Apple has got its own approach, but and a very good one. But you know, what Google is doing is mind-blowing, and that's why I think it is such a fantastic company. That, you know, it's that it can keep evolving, and you know, it can keep growing, and but it's hard to, if you go head to head with Google, it's very hard to compete with them, because, you know, they just have this company culture that they have incorporated for fostering new product development in all these different areas. Anyway, so, but you know, as all of you think of your own companies and your own startups, it's important to think of your engineers and resources in this mindset of growth hacker. Right? The other one is probably interesting is, you know, every time new platforms come along, there's a lot of startup opportunity. So, for example, Activision, Electronic Arts, all you know, World of Warcraft, yeah, Steam, all of these people were there, big monstrous companies, successes in the gaming market, and all Zynga did was put their game on Facebook, right? And all of a sudden, you know, this new platform allowed them to create a multi-billion-dollar new startup in this mature gaming industry. So every time a new platform takes off, and there are new platforms that will be coming every year or two for as long as we can foresee. You know, it's going to happen just because, you know, you've got so much going on. Some of the new platforms that are coming are wearables, right? That's a new platform. Apple Watch and other watches, smart watches. There are so many new platforms that you can see are coming, and all of them are great ways, great places to crack, you know, big existing markets, but on the new platform, right? So, okay, any questions on B2C marketing? Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Let's take a 10-minute break till about 9:15, and, you know, we've got a lot to cover, so, okay. Okay,
Guests at home, actually. So,
great.
next Monday I'm not here because Nimish is going to do it, so I'll do after that. So
You don't
but
come?
we'll exchange the dates.
Okay.
I'm traveling.
Okay, you're
in Los
traveling.
Angeles.
Okay, okay.
So,
Perfect.
getting cold.
Okay, getting cool. That's why I got my sweater. Yeah, sure. Give me a second here. Okay, go ahead.
I am a homeopath,
Yes. Okay.
healthcare practitioner.
Okay.
So now I am just trying to see what other ways I can grow.
Sure.
So all this what you're telling me, I can understand it all, but I don't know how much I'll be able to really put it into my practice or something. So I really am just lost now. What do I do? How do I take this one step further? And what are my options?
Yeah, so actually, you didn't come to the July course. Yeah, so that one was how do you take an idea to validating into a business model? So,
I
so
understand that.
yeah, so basically, you have to take your idea or your value proposition, and figure out, what kind of a company can be formed around it, right? What are which customer, how much they'll pay for it, what services you can provide, what's it going to cost, what's going to be the revenue. That business model needs to come together. So once that BMC comes together, then you can write a business plan for it. Then once you write a business plan, then company building comes together. So it's like 3 steps. Idea to BMC, BMC to business plan to company building. So we are in the company building
I
stage.
understand.
Yeah.
Yes. I can understand everything, but
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand
How to apply to
how do I
you.
apply it in my
Yeah.
practice.
So you need to
Do I-
get your BMC going first. Yeah. So that's the most important thing.
As a healthcare practitioner, what are the different?
Oh, healthcare is a boom business.
That's what I'm just.
It's a total boom business. So what you need to do is find 3, 4 people, or even 1 or 2 people. Just start talking, till you can zero in on something. Because it's all there.
Just
Opportunity is there.
funds are there.
It's just a
It's
question of.
getting into the right.
So it's like
and-
finding people that you can have conversation, brainstorming has to be done. Tons of brainstorming has to be done in order to finally zero in on, hey, this thing looks positive. That's how to go about it. So you need a founding team. By yourself, it's sometimes easy, sometimes difficult, but mostly difficult. So,
Okay.
okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Raj, I need to get the invite to.
Do it right now.
Yeah, okay. trevorbars@gmail.com.
No, we'll do it.
Failed one, and failed one and learn more, right? I think that's the thing.
Okay, can you put your email in and just say invite? Yeah.
Is this type in?
Enterprise or?
It's in, right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Have friends with Microsoft.
Not trying.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And thank you so much for the advice. I'm like moving back from just I was trying to launch to say
All right.
I was talking to you about
That's challenging.
my company, which was connecting people to game changers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Of
yeah,
course, yeah.
I'm trying now to go back and talk to Cisco. I want planning to talk to HR. So what I've
Good.
been doing a lot of research on is the millennials, right? The new
Mm-hmm.
folks that are
Millennials,
coming
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We really like experiential learning and want to see, talk to HR and see if we can launch that,
Mm-hmm.
provide great experience. Cisco has Cisco Live, maybe go present at Cisco Live with one of the VPs, whatever. So really amazing experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
It's it's worked at Cisco once.
Sure.
So, but not that message.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Something just go back with a different message and
yeah. That's the way to do it.
yeah,
Because you have access.
yeah, but
And that's the beauty of it.
yeah.
Now you got to build on that access.
Yeah, I was talking to Mohan Tirumali also,
Okay.
and he was think about. But I can talk to you later.
Okay.
Feedback.
That's what you want to hear.
Are they enjoying the tea? The tea break?
They can enjoy the tea, yeah, better than we can.
Tea break.
Maybe we should ask for that, eh? That they should have a chai.
Chai container.
Keep
Yeah,
chai.
I should tell her.
Have chai ready. Because it's cold, no? It'll be awesome. Yeah, Monday we should get chai.
Actually, I'll write to Suparna to make sure that
We have a chai. Or, yeah, chai, better than coffee. Perfect. Awesome.
chai in here. It is, but I don't know how good it is. I'm not
Okay.
a tea or a
Oh, you're not a tea or coffee. You don't know the pleasures. Okay.
Okay, so you will announce the class and then
Okay, guys. Hello. Okay, let's get started because we do want to get out on time here. So the first thing is the next class is on Monday. I hope you guys know that. It's Monday, same 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Yeah? And then everybody can enjoy the Thanksgiving. What else? Yeah, that's it. And then it's December 1. Because we don't have anything for the rest of that week, right? Okay, so we've got 6 viewers out there. So, okay, so we are going to move on to
Can we get a copy of these slides?
yeah, everybody's got it. It's all on the portal. So why don't I walk through the portal a little bit for you guys? Huh? I was just giving it to everybody. Okay, why don't you come here and type in your name?
Email ID?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one.
So you already have invite.
So when I go there, right, I didn't verify today, but
It's
yesterday
there.
night I verified. It was saying you're not a student. I see there is a, I see the course. When I click on the course, they say I'm not a student.
Get me another email. Don't you have another email address? Do you have another email address?
I can give my wife's email address for now.
Okay. Sometimes when people mess up, then I've got to delete it and then send the invite again. So hopefully this will go through. Because that one got rejected, yeah.
Okay. So I'll try.
Yeah, went through. Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Okay, so let me quickly go through what's on the portal. So on the portal, we've got, I hope you guys have taken a look at the video that was captured by Jasbir Singh. Yeah? Did you guys see it? It's really good, right? He's done a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Because he stays as late as all of us and he does an amazing job. So, so basically this week, if you look at the content, we've still not covered the global marketing stuff and the viral marketing, and we've gone through the go-to marketing for web startups. So that's got the presentation, etc. And then, you know, the slides and everything is right here. And then once I get the video from Jasbir's company, INDTV, then I'll upload it here, okay? And you always can go to the Raj Jaswa YouTube channel to actually see this video clip, see the YouTube on air clip. So that's very raw, but you can at least see it, yeah? Okay, so let's move on to B2B marketing. Okay, so most B2B marketing, you need to basically fill up. The thing that's important there in B2B marketing is their job is to fill something called the sales funnel. How many people have heard of the sales funnel? So somebody wants to explain? What's a sales funnel? Kima. The mic. Yeah. This one?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Myself, Vinay, I represent a company named Archili. Sales funnel for us is right from suspects till the orders. So
Yep.
suspects, prospects, agreements, closing, and then finally is the order.
Right.
Negotiation comes in between that. So that's a funnel. So if somebody can fill up the leads for all the suspects, what we have, or a target geographies or anything, and then make them a qualified ones, that's how the funnel runs.
Okay, so that's called the sales funnel, and in the sales funnel, typically it's wide at the top and becomes narrow till the customer drops out, right? And it's marketing's job to fill the funnel from the top. And the job that does that is called inbound marketing. So basically, these are the people that receive some collateral or information or something that will motivate them to come into the company, to either go in through the website, make a phone call, or drop in on the company, or whatever. So the marketing jobs that are done are things like newsletters that are sent out. You see all these newsletters, right? Health newsletters are very common. Diabetes 2. This is what's going on with diabetes 2. Everybody's at risk, and here is what's going on with the scientific research, and if you want to have a quick solution for that, then email to this particular, respond to this particular newsletter. So anyway, newsletters, blog posts, videos, etc. These are all inbound marketing. What that marketing person did for Microsoft was the video, right, which would be sent out, where along with the ad, if you press on this clip, it will automatically play a video, right? So all of these will motivate people to reach out or come into the companies. And then the whole idea is to leverage content and data that you have that could be interesting to the market segment that you're targeting to get there. And this HubSpot can be a useful tool. So one job of marketing is to get all those leads and fill the sales funnel. Of course, you do a lot of digital marketing similar to B2C, but in general, we always do, you're willing to spend a little bit of money. So these are very targeted people when you do B2B marketing, because there's the lifetime value of the customer coming in is quite a bit. For example, like the story that I have is that, again, at AppStream, remember that company that had $65 million, and the product took another 5 years to develop. So by the time they finished the product, it was like 7 years, $65 million are gone. And the salespeople that they had, because they said if you spend $65 million, then customers should spend, $250,000, $500,000 to use this software, right? So they went and hired a whole bunch of expensive salespeople and apps engineers to go with them to do the selling, to do the B2B selling, to find those big companies that can spend that kind of money and do the selling. And, it took a long time to sell. And all of a sudden, the cost of sales became so much that the deals were not closing, etc. Right? So the VCs, after spending $65 million, got very tired. and they were down to $1 million. The company was burning, because of sales and marketing, they were burning through like $2-3 million a quarter. And the VC said, I think we need to write off this thing and just shut the company down. And at that point, one of the VPs of engineering, Indian guy, said, look, I think this product is really good. Why don't you give me a chance to take the $1 million that is still left in the company? $64 million has been spent. It's still left in the company, and let me go ahead and make something from. So the VCs said, okay, $1 million are left. This VP of engineering is saying that he really believes in the product, and they gave him a chance. They said, okay, do something. So this Venkatraman, I think his name was. So this guy basically, essentially was made CEO, and he got rid of all the sales teams, got rid of all the most of the engineers, cut the team down from almost 40-50 people down to about 6, and said, why don't we go ahead and just put Google search words, do a Google search optimization, do a paid search, right? And and then let people just try the product if they're interested in this particular solution, and we can charge them just $25,000. We don't have to charge $250,000. And what's interesting is that schools, needed to do what AppStream function was, which was to allow them to buy one copy of Excel or Microsoft Office and let all the students use it for the semester, right? Things like that, or any other piece of software. Allowed the sharing of software within a client-server environment. And it's interesting that, random schools, from all over US started finding this AppStream company and trying it out on their own. And, $25,000 was within the school's budget generally. And, just started placing orders, and the money started coming in. So every search, started, with 5 or 10 search results, where you spend about $10 or $20, you'd get a $25,000 order. And before long, within 9 months, the company brought in $1 million of revenue. And all of a sudden, with only 6 employees, it was a profitable company, cash flow positive and profitable company. And then what happened was that Symantec found out that every time this school went ahead and licensed the software from a company called AppStream, these schools ended up buying some security software to go with the AppStream software. So the salespeople said, there is a software called AppStream that, every time the school buys it, it's so easy for us to sell another $25,000 or $50,000, security package inside the school. So Symantec reached out to AppStream and said, hey, why don't we form a partnership? And then our salespeople will promote it to all the schools, because we have an educational sales team and so on. And they will promote your product, and every time, AppStream goes in, we will go with you. You'll get your 25K, and we'll get our 50K. And now you can imagine what happened, right? Suddenly, like, you have 100 salespeople calling on all these, 5,000 schools in the US, and boom, the company started, growing suddenly without adding people, right? So paid search resulted in bringing us our sales price down from $250,000 minimum selling price down to $25,000. Cost of sales dropped like a rock, because it was, so push selling, it is pull selling. And we ended up also getting a partner. And then after 2 years, Now it was a profitable company. Semantic said, if we keep selling AppStream and you guys become very big, then we'll never be able to buy you guys out. So they made unasked for offer and said, why don't we just buy you guys out for $65 million? So here the VCs who had planned on writing off $65 million got all their money, and they said, oh, thank you very much. Now we don't have to announce a big loss to our partners. And they said, and as a part of their goodness, happy feeling, they said, we'll even give some common shares, some value. Otherwise, preferred stock will take it all, right? So actually, the original founder who had ran the company for 7 years, got nothing out of it, had been moved out. He made a couple of $1 million, and then this VP of engineering made $1 million or $2 million. So everybody and all the other employees made a little bit of money, right? So anyway, the point is paid search. Again, what ended up happening was that company became a long tail company. Did you see that? Long tail means they reached out to a consumer that was hard to get to, who had a very specific need, and it was pull-based selling rather than push-based selling. Pull marketing rather than push, right? So you can see how, with B2B and with paid search, you can actually go ahead and take companies that might otherwise fail because of the cost of sales and make them into, successful companies. Yeah.
I'm Sanjay Manskari.
Yes.
I'm a 20-year veteran in the semiconductor industry.
Sure.
I'm looking forward in the IoT space as a co-founder, joining with somebody else. So my question here is B2B, early customer engagement. Can that be used to solve this problem of sales cost? If you have some sort of early customer engagement, so these are the guaranteed customers. So how can that be tied with the long tail company? Can you just
long tail marketing?
Yeah, long tail.
Okay, so totally the question is like, how can early customers help you in your long tail marketing, right?
Yes.
So we'll do this more when we do selling, because we're going to focus on B2B selling. But you'll find that it's really important for complex products to get validated by big companies. For example, yesterday, I don't know how many of you came to this My Story. How many people went to My Story? So a bunch of you. By the way, you guys should go to My Story. My Story is a whole bunch of, in my opinion, very good guest speakers who will fill out your experience base of different kinds of startups and challenges. So yesterday there was a guy called Oren Hoffman who's started a company called LiveRamp, and he was talking of how his company, over 6-7 years went from nothing and got sold for $300 million or something. But he said that, the key break for them, for the first 4 years, the company was not successful. They changed the product direction, etc. But finally, what got the company going was their partnership with Walmart. They somehow or the other managed to convince Walmart to go ahead and use their software. And once Walmart became their partner or customer, early customer, Walmart, asked, hey, what about this feature? What about that feature? What about this? Before you knew it, they helped get all the functionality of the product right, and then they also became a reference. So once Walmart becomes a reference, then automatically it's got such a good brand name that it'll automatically help you when you're selling in the long tail. Because the hardest thing in long tail, as you'll see from Pratik's thing, is referenceability. You know, your Cheeky Chunk is unknown. Your IoT company is going to be unknown. Nobody will know the name of your company. But if your reference customer is a name branded customer like Walmart or GE or Siemens or Cisco or Dell or any of these guys, automatically you can write their referenceability. And the long tail market will automatically, get a lot of interest. So it's definitely got a role to play in leverage in getting your long tail marketing to, start working.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next element of B2B marketing is, so we talked about inbound marketing, we talked about the digital marketing, and now we talk about remarketing. So, so basically, like, what I have found with my B2B businesses is that when I can get other people to say good things about my company, it dramatically eases my ability to promote my products. So, so basically, with remarketing, what we do is basically we get other companies or partners to go ahead and promote your product, or even just name your product or reference sell your, not even reference sell. It's just like, it's there along with their product, right? The other thing is that typically, when people come to your website, as you can see in this particular thing, you'll see that if they can figure out, if they can get that same message from another website, then it basically reinforces something they've heard on your website. So all of a sudden, where they may not have been interested, they suddenly find that, you are an interesting partner for them. So basically, like, remarketing is something that you now do in the digital world, but previously we used to do it in the real world. So remarketing is something that is now being redesigned for the digital world, where you actually get your partners' websites to also make it into a way to get back and reinforce a message that they would have got from your website, right? So this is something that we used to do quite a bit with all our partner, like, when we sell chipsets, there are also complementary other chips that go on a motherboard, for example, power control chips or power management chips, graphics chips, or peripheral chips, etc. So we would go to them and say that, why don't you go ahead and put in some stuff about our core logic chips, and we will do the same thing for your chips on our evaluation motherboards or on our design kits and so on. We will put in your chips on our design kit for our product. And that kind of referenceability, remarketing, can absolutely sometimes help you launch your product even better than you trying to sell it yourself. So getting your partners and building up a relationship with your partners so that they go ahead and talk about your product, sometimes that has got more value than you talking about your product, right? So that is something that you have to be very clear about. So, we did that a lot at Opti, because at Opti we would design all these evaluation boards for our customers, and typically we would have, some piece of the motherboard, but there would also be a whole bunch of others, and we'll just go to, the BIOS vendor, the peripheral vendor, the graphic vendor, and so on. Why don't we put your chips on there? If you're willing to say good things about our chips when, somebody calls in, and, it's helping each other. So that's a pretty important tool. Lots of other stuff that can be done. So let me now go to okay, now we're going to, how to build a global go-to-market strategy, because I found that, very often the US is a very congested marketplace, and sometimes it's hard to break into the US because of all the relationships and other things that, all your customers will be tied up with by the companies that were big companies and other companies. And there are ways by which, you can actually become successful abroad and then come back into the US. So for actually all three of my companies, I found that going abroad was a heck of a good way to become successful. And then you become successful in the US. So let me kind of just share with you, how, I leveraged global in order to actually succeed on a worldwide basis, right? And succeed in the US too. So I've already talked about the companies Opti, Selectica, and Dyno, and all very different kinds of companies. And the number one and number two things, I think I've covered quite a few of these things already. But number two, one and two things were always for me the most important things in terms of creating a successful startup, which was to be responsive to the market and to have fast synergistic product development. So marketing and product development really are in tight collaboration, and that really gives you big time to market advantages. So globalization is, how I went ahead and succeeded with Opti, Selectica, and Dyno too, as a startup. And too many entrepreneurs are nervous about going global first, right? And they, in a sense, are missing out a tremendous angle for becoming successful in the marketplace. So just to give you a little bit of background, with Opti, I actually decided, even though the US and Europe were the biggest markets for chipsets when we started our company, I decided deliberately to not even sell the product to all the US and European PC manufacturers. So I decided not to sell it to Dell, Cisco, IBM, HP, Olivetti in Europe, Nixdorf in Germany. I decided not to sell them my product. And I decided that, I'll go ahead and dominate the Far East market, and I'll explain. And then after succeeding there, I'll enter these markets, which I did after about 3 years. With Selectica, what I did was I just built up a huge technical team in India in order to service the Global 2000 accounts. where everybody else was building the team here, I went and built it up in India. So again, used a global strategy where the competition was looking for engineers in the US during the dot-com boom time. I went ahead and grabbed all the engineers, and then with Dino video streaming, I tried everything under the sun to succeed in the US, but with YouTube and Justin TV and Ustream and Vimeo and all of these guys already there 5, 6 years or 10 years ahead of me, it was very hard for me to break in. So finally, I found that, I could actually forget the US generated content, and go to content generated rest of the world and targeting their ethnic diaspora all over the world, and decided that that would be my target market. So you can see that, as an entrepreneur, I had to go ahead and think out of the box as to how I would build my company. So I told you that 19 out of the 20 startups, chipset startups, failed. And they failed because they went against chips and VLSI and Intel and so on to the biggest buyers of chipsets, which was IBM, Dell, everywhere. So they went and tried to sell their product and saying, hey, these are people who buy, 5 million chipsets a year. And they said, we're going to sell it, we should sell to them first, right? So that's when 80–90% of the market was. And they found that it was impossible to break in, but it took them, a year to find that out, and till it was too late, right? So they all went broke. So even though, I'd worked at Intel and IBM, Intel and Microsoft, Intel and chips, and I knew all the buyers and everybody at all of these companies, and I'd done business with all of these guys, with Michael Dell and everybody. I'd done it for, at least 5–6 years, and decided not to sell him any product, even though I had the relationship. That's because I knew the challenges of getting in, into these accounts. So I decided that the way for me to do it is to address a market that the other competitors are not targeting. So going back to marketing, their job is to find out who's going to be able to buy this product, use it, and to do it in a profitable way, right? So basically, marketing's job is to take care of the product, the pricing, where you're going to sell the product, and how you're going to promote it, right? These are the 4 functions of marketing that have to be done. And just to clarify, selling focuses on the needs of the buyer or needs of the seller, while selling wants to get the inventory out, he wants to make a profit, while marketing focuses on the needs of the buyer. He wants to figure out what is the need that needs to be satisfied. So with Opti, I told you, we decided to ignore 80–90% of the market, and yet in 5 years we became the world leader, and became 1 out of 4 PCs was using our chipset, and all the big companies in US and Europe were also using my product, right? So the question was, well, if I'd gone to them directly, I wouldn't have had any of them using my product. But by going around them, using my globalization strategy, I could end up getting all of them, right? So let's figure out how we did it. So what we did was the following, which was the Far East manufacturers, motherboard and PC manufacturers, were always treated as one notch below the first-tier customers, right? By Intel, VLSI chips, etc. Right? All the big companies said, "Hey, we need to get anchor wins at Cisco, at HP, at Dell, at thing," and then once they're using a chipset, everybody else has to use a chipset. The Far East has to use a chipset, right? So Far East was basically a tier 2 customer. So basically, they were only given the chipsets and the samples 6 months after Dell and Compaq and IBM got the chipsets. And that's how the world was till Opti came into the picture. And so what I did was, as soon as a chipset was done, I refused to even show it to any of these big US companies. And the day the chipsets came in and they started working, I flew to Taiwan. And I went to manufacturer after manufacturer, the top 10 manufacturers in Taiwan. And I said that, look, and they all said, who's Opti? How did you design your chipset? And why should we use your chipset? We'll design a motherboard with your chipset, and everybody's going to say, who's Opti? So nobody's going to use our motherboards, right? Because previously they were programmed that people will buy a motherboard because Dell is using the Intel chipset, or Dell is using the VLSI chipset, or the Chips and Technology chipset. So that was the mindset of all the manufacturers. So I said, so the message I gave them is, look, I used to work at Chips and Intel. I know what a good chipset is, and I can tell you that this is the best chipset. It's got all the right features, etc. And guess what? Previously, you used to be 6 months behind everybody whenever you launch a new PC. And we all know that the price of a PC comes down by almost 50% in 6 months, which means all you can make gross margin wise on your motherboard is about 10 or 20%, which is, subsistence level earnings for your company. I said, I'm going to give you a chipset that is faster than any of the other big US and European PC manufacturers, and as a consequence, you will be able to charge the full price, premium price at the launch of a new product, and you will make 50% more profit or 100% more profit. You'll double or triple your profit. And it's interesting, out of the 10 top motherboard manufacturers that we visited on that trip, we got orders from 8 of them. So 8 of the top 10 motherboard manufacturers, became our customers in one 5-day visit, if you can imagine. And then you can see that by giving, by changing the game, rules of the game, for a market segment or set of users, users, I could go ahead and close deals at such a high speed, with such a success rate. And then what I did was, there are about 300 motherboard manufacturers in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea, and Singapore, right? 300. But I'd only convinced 8 or 10 of them to launch their product at Comdex, which is the big PC show that is in Las Vegas in November. And so what I did was I prepared on my own 100 or 200 sample motherboards, but did not put any name on it, but left a place for a sticker for a company, but just did not made it a nameless motherboard. And then we went to Comdex with these 200 motherboards, and then went there a day before, and then while the booths were being set up, we called on all the people, all these 300 motherboard manufacturers' booths, and said, do you want the world's fastest 386 and 486 motherboard for your booth? And before you knew it, everybody wanted it. And so suddenly, like, we had Opti motherboards in 300 booths at Comdex. And all the buyers who would come for these motherboards, like the resellers and people who VARs and so on, essentially saw that, you know, the fastest motherboard is from this company called Opti, and suddenly in one day we became known as the fastest, you know, chipset vendor for building 386 and 486 motherboards all over the entire PC industry. And you know, so essentially what we ended up doing is by flooding Comdex with these no-name motherboards and giving those 10 you know, key motherboard manufacturers a jump in the marketplace, we became the industry standard for the high-end motherboard market, which is where all the money is. And our revenue from, you know, zero in the first year, in the next year we had 25 million in revenue with $20 million in profit. In the third year we had 65 million with $35 million in profit, then hit $100 million, and then we took the company public. So you can see that, you know, essentially we ended up, you know, using a business strategy to go after a market segment that was treated differently by everybody else, and by changing the whole game. So all of a sudden what ended up happening was that after about 2 years, I suddenly get this call from Michael Dell saying that, you know, hey, we are interested in your chipsets, you know, how come nobody from Opti calls on Dell, you know, because so it's interesting that, you know, finally, like, even the big companies had no choice but to go ahead and come to us. So we didn't have to actually go ahead and do push marketing with, you know, expensive salespeople and so on, even to the big companies, because in a sense, you know, we ended up, you know, changing the entire game as to how chipset vendors and others would succeed in the marketplace. So there are many other things that we developed in our game plan, that in a marketing game plan that completely changed how the industry was run. So for example, I don't know how many of you are in the chip design business, but typically Intel would write about 1,000-page technical manual for their 3 or 4 chips. And when you ask for samples, the first thing the salesman comes and drops off these, you know, 1,000-page manuals of describing every pin and every function and every variation of every chip feature and function and all that. And you know, you're expecting all these engineers in Taiwan who don't know English, or in Hong Kong who don't know English, to go ahead and read those manuals and figure out how to connect those chips and, you know, create a working motherboard, right? So basically, when we came along, we said no manuals. So we would walk into these customers in Taiwan and they would say, where are the manuals? Because they're all trained to get manuals from VLSI and chips and this and that. And we said, no manuals. So kind of shocked them. I said, but we'll give you a completely working, tested motherboard. And we'll give you the schematics for the motherboard. And we'll give you the PCB layout for the motherboard. And all you got to do is run the compatibility test, performance test, do the temperature testing and all that other testing on this demo board. And here's the PCB film that you can use to, make a 10,000 motherboards for production in 2 weeks. And where previously, Intel and others would give these things, they would design the motherboard, they make mistakes, they got to redo the motherboard. It would take 9 months for this motherboard manufacturer to release the first order of 10,000 chips. Here, the minute I walk in 2 weeks, I'm getting an order for 10,000 chips. And it's like, I think we just completely changed the way business was done in the whole PC industry. And, it was amazing times because, we were 20 people and we were getting $25 million in revenue. We were like 40 people and we're getting $65 million in revenue. We're shipping millions of chipsets. With, 20 people, I'm a semiconductor company. It's like kind of ridiculous. But, we just changed the way in which business was done in the semiconductor industry forever. And so the other things that we did is, since we knew we were going to execute this strategy, it wouldn't help if somebody orders 10,000 chips and we've only got, 2 samples to give them, right? So essentially, I told my engineering team that, when we release a chipset for prototypes, I'm going to release my production order simultaneously. And we'll order 100,000 chipsets without testing it. And you guys should be sure that's all going to work, because otherwise, we've got $1 million in the bank and it's all gone if the 100,000 chips come back and they don't work. Because all my customers were expecting these chips, right? And I was expecting all these production orders. So essentially what I did was I told my engineers, you can take an extra day or two to think about why this entire chip that you're designing is going to work or not. But finally, when you release the chip, I'm releasing the PO for making 100,000 chips at the same time. Because otherwise it takes me like, I get the samples back and then I release the production order. It's like another 5 months. So what I did was I told the engineers, we get the prototype, we get the 100,000 chips at one shot, we get the customer development at the same time, and we become successful in, concurrently. And what's fascinating is that you put that kind of trust in your engineering team that it needs to work at first shot, and guess what? It works. And every chipset that we released, we always released it at one shot, while all our competition used to take at least 2 cuts or 3 cuts in order to get it right. So we were always like 6 months to a year ahead of the competition for every generation of chipset. And that's how a company with less than $1 million of funding ended up becoming kind of the world leader and destroyed all the other startups. And ultimately, within 3 years, we drove Chips and Technologies, which had like $200 million cash in the bank when I left them, had like 600-800 employees. They became bankrupt in 4 years. So kind of just destroyed the competition. Because when you change the way business is done, fundamentally, you can just go ahead, you're going to change the landscape. But we were just innovating through marketing strategies on a continuous basis. So you can see why marketing, once it teams up in a properly with an engineering and a sales and a business strategy, it becomes an amazing team, incredibly strong player. And so, we started providing these turnkey manufacturing packages, products always available immediately. And then the other thing is we even took care of our cash flow problem, because essentially, in Taiwan, you get these letters of credit where as soon as they place the order, you can cash in 80% of their purchase order instantly. And then when you ship them the product, the remaining 20% of the cash comes in. So you don't have to wait for 30 days, 45 days, 60 days to even collect the cash. So you can see how, we solved all the problems for building a semiconductor company with no cash, but with great, innovative marketing strategies, right? Marketing, financing, and business strategies. Anyway, so there's a whole article about how LCs are done and how you can really use it to take care of your cash flow problem. Yes?
How did you get around the UL certification? Because that does take time.
Very good question. The question was, how do we take care of UL certification? So you can see that, previously, every motherboard manufacturer would have to do UL certification, right? So what we did is we had the best PCB designers in the Valley design the PCB for all the motherboard manufacturers and then we would go ahead and do all the UL certification and everything ourselves for this motherboard design. So, and with UL certification, actually the way it works is, it really doesn't need UL certification, except that, people know that it's going to be there, right? And, we had put it through the process. The motherboard manufacturers know that it's going to work and it's going to be there. And so, they would basically sell it to the reseller saying that, this thing is going to come, trust us, and, then they would get it. But we would do the whole work for the customer. See, that's the unique thing. If you have to wait for 300 manufacturers to each of them get their own UL certification, do their own, then you're slowing down your own market and your own success. So, in a sense, time to market is not just you supplying to them, but going all the way to the end consumer, right? Yeah. Okay, so with Selectica, we were also having big competitive problems, and so what we did here is, again, we found the key problem that needed to be solved, and the key problem that needed to be solved was, it's very hard for CIOs to trust a new software vendor in this enterprise software business. That trust is very difficult, right? So we found that, you can claim that, you have the best configuration engine or the best pricing engine or whatever, but to have some CIO trust you, some CIO in the Midwest or East Coast, or a financial services company like Aetna, or a health services company to trust you that our product is going to work, was very difficult. So what we did is we just took our team in Pune and Chennai, and we just went to their websites, pulled out all the information about their products, and created mock-up configurators. So we walked into companies like Hitachi and others with a finished product. Like, I remember the sales that we did at IBM. So IBM had already signed up with our competitor, Trilogy, and for about 6-7 years they'd spent probably over $100 million on Trilogy software and development. And so what I did was I had my team in Pune go ahead and build a complete IBM mainframe configurator with all graphical plug and play, and you can move things like this and that. And when we walked into the account at IBM, because it took us almost 1 year to even get an appointment inside IBM, because they said, why do we need to see you? But finally we got in. And after we got in, essentially, I said, look, we don't want to go ahead and teach you about configuration. You know a lot about configuration, but why don't we show you, what a configurator can do? And everybody would like to, see something, right? So, and then we popped up an IBM mainframe and its racks and different kinds of things and different rules, etc. And we showed, you can pick up a board from here and put it there, and automatically it changes the pricing and the performance and all the characteristics, and just made it into a visual dynamic experience, right? And by doing that, we got instant credibility at IBM, and took us another year, but then we knocked out Trilogy from their anchor customer, and closed a $25 million deal there. So the point is that when you're doing B2B selling, you got to know what problem you're trying to solve in the sales cycle, and then leverage, come up with a creative solution for it, and leverage something that you are really good at, or you have a competitive advantage, and then go ahead and do that. Okay, it's almost 10:30 again, so we'll try and wrap up I've got a few more things on B2B on Monday, and then we'll get on with sales. Okay? Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Yeah.